Strange, yet true stories. Stories from the light side, the dark side, and the other side. I'm Steve White. The untold story of the Patterson Gimlin film. The most famous Bigfoot footage was filmed in 1967 in Bluff Creek, California by Roger Patterson and Robert Gimlin. The 59-second clip shows a large, gorilla-type creature walking to one side of the forest into a large opening. We've all seen it, but apparently we haven't been told the whole story. What you're about to hear is an untold story of the famous Patterson footage that may completely unveil the mystery behind this famous film. It's been a while since this happened, so I'm telling it as best as I can remember. In the summer of 2006, my cousin had phoned me from Los Angeles. He told me that his band had just signed a recording deal with a major label. We have always stayed in touch since he left New York and moved out to California. While I did the 9-to-5 thing in New York, he relentlessly chased a career in music and finally hooked up with a metal band out west. I wasn't surprised when he informed me of the good news, because I knew it was in his cards. Most of our phone call consisted of catching up on family and stuff. Toward the end of the conversation, he added that the record label was throwing a promotional bash for the band and he wanted me to fly out west for the occasion. So after talking for about 10 minutes, I heard a voice, his roommate, on his end in the background say, "Did you tell him about the Bigfoot thing?" That's when my cousin said, "Oh man, you have got to see this." "Do you remember the Bigfoot video from the 1970s? The famous one?" "Sure," I said. "The Patterson Gimlin film." "The studio's sound engineer is this guy from Napa Valley," he said, "and we've been working with him. He's sitting on a film that many people haven't seen." "What of?" I asked. "Remember the movie where Bigfoot walks past the screen and looks at the camera?" he said. "For years, when it was shown on TV, it was edited. There's a big piece missing. When they show it on television, it's shown out of context. This guy we hooked up with has a different film, an entirely different thing." This is how my cousin explained the film to me. The film starts off very shaky. After a few seconds, the subjects come into focus. It starts off with a few of these creatures digging for something, not just one. I remember him saying distinctly 3. They are also very far away from the camera. They start to walk down a trail or a path, and then they stop by a pond or a puddle of water. They separate, but then soon regroup. It seemed like these creatures were just doing a surveillance of the area. Surreal is the word he used because he was not sure what to make of this. The whole time the camera is on them, and they don't know it. Then, all of a sudden, a hail of gunfire comes from the tree line and blasts these things cold. One of the creatures drops, and another one bolts into the woods. The remaining one strangely just walks or staggers off. As one of the creatures walked off, someone kept taking pot shots at it from a distance. That's the creature you see in the popular film. The whole time while he's explaining this to me, I was trying to envision a film that I hadn't seen in years. I vaguely remember it, but I certainly don't recall any violence. He also said that there was another film, which was shocking as well as disgusting. It shows a bunch of men dragging one of the lifeless bodies and placing it on a tarp or a pool cover, and then cutting it up. Obviously, there was no sound on these videos. I told him that if this was lost footage or something, then it would probably be worth something to somebody. From here on, I will refer to the owner of the film as John, which is not his real name. When I finally made it out to California, I had the pleasure of meeting John, the film's owner. By this time, I had done my homework and knew that if what he had is the real thing, this guy would be sitting on a gold mine. I asked John how it all came to be. His response was, "Actually, it's not mine. It was my uncle's." His uncle, now deceased, wasn't even supposed to have it. It turned out that his uncle lived in Yakima at the time, and he was buddies with one of the trackers who was going out looking for these things. He went along with the group. There were about 8 men altogether, all heavily armed. Somehow, he ended up getting a copy of the film and then never mentioned a word to anyone. They had no idea what they would run into out there, so they brought enough manpower and firearms to start a small war. There were roughly 3 cameras rolling at all times, so they had much more than the 50 seconds that they show on television. The problem was that all of those involved didn't know where they stood as far as the law went. They felt that authorities would have screamed murder and then hung them out to dry. John said that there was a person with money who wanted to have a look at the film and maybe do business at one point. He was a lawyer or businessman type. John also added that an eccentric named Eric Beckard, a researcher, was harassing him at one point. He threatened John by saying he would drag his ass into Supreme Court if he had to. Then he was never heard from again. By now, John felt that too many people were getting wind of this, and he became paranoid that someone was going to try and rip him off. The final straw was when he returned home after a short time away and found his apartment broken into. The investigating officers said that it was clear and certain whoever broke in only wanted one thing, which, by the way, they didn't get. That's when he rented a safe deposit box, and that's where it sits to this day. As far as I know. I didn't get to see the films because they were safe and secure in Sonoma and we were in LA. He did promise me that if my cousin and I were ever in the area, he would let me view the films. He only asked that I give him a day or so notice. To be honest, I really don't believe in Bigfoot, and the topic doesn't grab my interest all that much. I understand that there are people all around the world who take this subject seriously, and that's fine. So for those who believe in such, I'll let you decide whether to put any credence in this story or not.